Basically, there are receptors on your cell membrane, and these receptors they will bring out certain change in the functions of cell. They will bring out the changes in the function of cell. कैसे करते हैं वो? They changes the enzyme activity, or they changes the permeability to the certain ions, or they changes the conformational feature of genetic material. Any drug or any agent or any ligand, जो ड्रग होता है उसको अपन लिगैंड बोलेंगे, लिगैंड और एगोनिस्ट बोलेंगे. रिसेप्टर आर नथिंग बट द स्पेसिफिक प्रोटीन्स ऑन द सेल मेम्ब्रेन. They may be present on the cell membrane, or they might present on the cytosol or cytoplasm, which regulates the functions of cell by altering the enzymatic activity, or by making change in the permeability to the ions, or by doing the conformational feature or changing the genetic material in the nucleus. Such proteins with the functional correlate, they are known as the receptors. There are different types of receptor on the cell membrane to which drug will interact to produce a certain kind of effect, right? So पहला type होता है, so first type of receptor. So you can see this is known as cell membrane. ये क्या है आपका cell membrane, which is a lipid bilayer in nature. So on this cell membrane there are different kind of proteins. So like this protein is known as an ion channel. First type of receptor they are known as an ion channel. Drug which will interact, or agonist which will interact with this, will change the permeability to the ions. For example, you can see over here, यहाँ पे दिखाया है sodium is outside. After getting interaction with the drug or agonist, sodium will go inside the cell, and that result in the change in the intracellular potential. Okay, either disturbance or increase the potential. So first receptor is known as the ionotropic receptor. Second receptor is nothing but the G protein coupled receptor. They are known as G protein coupled receptor. You can see, so agonist or drug will interact with these proteins, and there is a, again these receptors are connected with the G protein. After activation of G protein, so there is a generation of secondary messenger inside the cell, and this secondary messenger will give another signal known as a effector signal, and will change out the, again same thing, functional, same thing, again enzyme activity will be changed. Okay, or there is a genetic or there is a change in the permeability of ions, etc., etc., right? So this is again second type of receptor. Now third type of receptor is nothing but the, it is known as a enzyme linked receptor. Enzyme linked receptor. So agonist will bind to this kind of receptor, will bring about the change in the enzymes. Okay, phosphorylation of tyrosine kinase, and that leads to either activation or inactivation of cells. So third type of receptor. Fourth type of receptor is known as a intracellular receptor, or also known as a genetic, also known as a receptor that regulates the gene transcription, also known as a hormonal receptor. So as the name indicates, intracellular मतलब क्या है, सेल के अंदर. तो ये क्या है, this side is outside, सेल के outside है, this side is inside, सेल के अंदर, बीच में क्या है, membrane है, cell membrane. So this type of receptor is known as intracellular receptor. Our drug or agonist which will combine with this intracellular receptor, they directly bring about changes in the genetic material, DNA or RNA, and will change the respective protein, and will bring about the effect. Now these are the main basic four type of receptors. We'll see these receptors in the details now. Okay. Again you can see over here, so this part is known as the outside the cell, this part is known as the inside the cell, and in between this there is a membrane. बीच में क्या है, membrane है, और ये outside होता है, ये inside होता है. Now first type of receptor is nothing but the ion channel receptor. What they will do, a drug which will interact with the ion channel, agonist or antagonist or ligand, so it will bind to ion channel, and ion channel will change the permeability to the ions. यहाँ पे क्या है, outside cell मतलब extra cellular fluid होता है, उसमें क्या क्या हो सकता है, आपका salts होते हैं, सोडियम क्लोराइड, बाइकार्बोनेट, कैल्शियम हो गए. So cations means positively charged ions. Cations means क्या, positively charged ions, and anions means what, negatively charged ions. So if cations go inside the cell, that leads to depolarization. cations अगर positively charged ion अगर अंदर जाएगा तो depolarization होता है. क्यों होता है, because inside the cell there is negative potential. inside cell क्या होता है, negative potential होता है, ठीक है, negative charge होता है. outside charge होता है positive, ठीक है, mostly negative भी होता है लेकिन outside mostly positive होता है. inside the cell negative होता है, एंड अगर कोई पॉजिटिव आयन अगर अंदर जाता है तो वो क्या करता है, डीपोलराइजेशन करता है, क्या करता है, डीपोलराइजेशन. एंड डीपोलराइजेशन रिजल्ट इन द stimulation or increased activity of cell, right? Now if there is a entry of negative ions inside the cell, if there is a entry of negative ions inside the cell, what will happen? Because inside the cell के अंदर पहले क्या है, पहले ही negativity है inside the cell, already there is electronegativity, अंदर क्या है, negative potential है. Now suppose if negative ions like anions like chloride ion, so if that moves inside, it will cause hyperpolarization. हाइपर मतलब क्या, ज्यादा, पोलराइजेशन मतलब पोलैरिटी. तो सेल के अंदर पहले नेगेटिविटी ज्यादा है, क्लोराइड आयन अगर अंदर जाएगा तो नेगेटिविटी और ज्यादा हो जाएगी, दैट इज नोन एज हाइपर पोलराइजेशन. अगर कैटायन अंदर जाएगा तो दैट विल कॉज डीपोलराइजेशन. तो डीपोलराइजेशन रिजल्ट इन द स्टिमुलेशन एक्शन, हाइपर पोलराइजेशन रिजल्ट इन द negative action or inhibitory effect. You have to remember this. Second type of receptor is nothing but the G protein coupled receptor. G protein coupled receptor. Okay, so these receptor drug which interact with this receptor or agonist, it will interact with the receptor. As the name indicates, G protein coupled receptor. इसका नाम ही क्या है कि G protein coupled receptor. तो कौन से प्रोटीन है भाई, यहाँ पे G प्रोटीन, ठीक है, G प्रोटीन किसके साथ में कपल्ड है, रिसेप्टर के साथ में. देखो ये रिसेप्टर है आपका आर फॉर रिसेप्टर एंड जी प्रोटीन, दिस इज जी प्रोटीन. तो जी प्रोटीन क्यों बोलते हैं इनको, बिकॉज दे आर नथिंग बट द गोनोसिन न्यूक्लियस प्रोटीन. सो गोनोसिन जीटीपी, गोनोसिन ट्राइफॉस्फेट और जीडीपी, गोनोसिन डाइफॉस्फेट. दिस प्रोटीन दे हैव attached with the guanosine or guanosine triphosphate or guanosine diphosphate nucleotides. So that's why they are known as G protein coupled receptor. Okay. So upon the activation of G protein coupled receptor, so these G proteins are in a association. तो G protein तीन टाइप का होता है, अल्फा बीटा, यहाँ पे सॉरी यहाँ पे तीन टाइप का G protein होता है, G stimulate, G S, G I and G Q. तो तीन टाइप का G protein होता है, G S, G I, G Q. So these G proteins, so after the activation of receptor by agonist G proteins, they are, पहले तो ये G protein क्या होता है कि एक साथ में रहते हैं, they are in a association. When a drug will interact with the receptor, they get dissociated. तो पहले तो एक साथ में रहते हैं G I, G Q, G S. तो जब ड्रग उसके साथ में कंबाइन होता है तो सब अलग अलग हो जाते हैं एंड उसके अकॉर्डिंगली वो इफेक्ट दिखाते हैं. तो दे स्टिमुलेट वन एंजाइम, ओके, दे स्टिमुलेट एंजाइम्स. तो यहाँ पे एंजाइम को स्टिमुलेट करेगा लाइक दिस एंजाइम एंड आफ्टर दैट देयर इज जनरेशन ऑफ सेकेंडरी मैसेंजर्स. सेकेंडरी मैसेंजर्स विल transmit a signal, will bring out the change in the, they cause phosphorylation of certain proteins, or they will change the permeability of ions, or they will change the action of enzyme, and then you will get either positive or negative effect cellular. This is G protein. Now third type of receptor is nothing but the third type of receptor is known as the enzymatic receptor. Okay, enzymatic receptor, also known as the tyrosine kinase linked receptor. These receptor will interact, they have two domains. इनको दो साइड होते हैं, एक तो होता है सेल मेम्ब्रेन के आउटसाइड सेल, आउटसाइड पार्ट मतलब उसको बोलते हैं बाइंडिंग डोमेन, एंड एक पार्ट होता है इनसाइड सेल, so the catalytic domain. Now a drug which will interact with this tyrosine kinase receptor will bring about the phosphorylation of certain protein, and then there will be cellular. We are going to see in the detail, don't worry. Type 4 receptor is known as a intracellular receptor or receptor that regulate the gene transcription. Now drug which will interact with the intracellular receptor, because as the name indicate intracellular मतलब क्या है, सेल के अंदर होता है, so it will interact with the receptor present on the in the cell. ठीक है, इसको एक्टिवेट करने के बाद में क्या होगा, so receptor, drug receptor complex will be transported into the nucleus of the cell, okay, where it will change in the DNA RNA of the cell, will cause protein synthesis, will either increase the protein synthesis or decrease the protein synthesis, and then you are going to get your cellular effect. These are the types of different types of receptors. Basically यहाँ पे चार टाइप के रिसेप्टर होते हैं. पहला होता है आयन चैनल, दूसरा होता है जी प्रोटीन कपल रिसेप्टर, तीसरा होता है एंजाइमेटिक रिसेप्टर एंड लास्ट चौथा होता है आपका इंट्रासेलुलर रिसेप्टर. We will see this receptor in the detail. So this table is very important. इसके ऊपर कम से कम 5 बार क्वेश्चन आ चुका है. So everything is same. तो जो पहले है वही है, बस पहले डायग्रामेटिक वे से दिखाया आपको. यहाँ पे रोटेबिलिटी. Main types of receptors. Main 4 types of. So type of receptor and their features. So यहाँ पे देखो क्लास लिखा है. So class of receptor. Then location, कहाँ पे लोकेटेड है, मेम्ब्रेन के ऊपर है, इनसाइड सेल है. देन इफेक्टर सेल, इफेक्टर कैसा है, कपलिंग किसके साथ में है, एग्जांपल्स उस टाइप के रिसेप्टर के एग्जांपल्स क्या है, एंड सेकेंडरी मैसेंजर्स, अगर कोई सेकेंडरी मैसेंजर है तो वो है या नहीं. एंड इन दिस कॉलम टाइप्स ऑफ रिसेप्टर, so type 1, type 2, type 3 and type 4. So we'll see it one by one. So first type of receptor is nothing but the type 1 receptor known as the ion channels. Type 1 receptor is known as the ion channels, and they are also known as the ionotropic receptor or ion channel or channel linker receptor, or they are known as the ligand gated ion channels. यहाँ पे मैंने 4 synonyms बोले आपको, ठीक है, आपको याद रखना क्योंकि सब कुछ लिखा हुआ नहीं. So type 1 receptor is also known as a ion channels. Type 1 receptor is also known as a ionotropic receptor. Type 1 receptor is also known as a ligand gated ion channels. Synonyms के ऊपर क्वेश्चन आता है, so you have to remember. Okay, now where they are present, ये कहाँ पे होते हैं, सेल मेम्ब्रेन. लोकेशन कहाँ पे, सेल मेम्ब्रेन. now इफेक्टर क्या है, इफेक्ट किसके ऊपर करते हैं, so channels, प्रोटीन चैनल्स. कपलिंग कैसे होता है उसका, they are directly coupled to a protein channel. what are the examples of these ion channel receptors? Examples are very important, क्वेश्चन आता है उसके ऊपर. Remember nicotinic acetylcholine receptors, then GABA receptor, GABA A, then glycine receptor, then 5-HT3 receptor, then this nicotinic receptor, GABA receptor, glycine receptor and 5-HT3 receptor. These are the receptors or these are the examples of ion channel receptor. तो आपको I don't know whether you have done with the sympathetic parasympathetic nervous system drugs acting on a. So GABA receptor जो है that is a chloride gated ion channels. Glycine receptor sodium ion channels होता है. निकोटिनिक एसिटिलकोलिन रिसेप्टर आयन चैनल होता है. तो एसिटिलकोलिन के दो टाइप के रिसेप्टर होते हैं, एक होता है मस्कनिक रिसेप्टर, एक होता है निकोटिनिक रिसेप्टर. तो मस्कनिक रिसेप्टर दे आर नथिंग बट दे आर द class of type 2 receptor known as a G protein coupled receptor. But nicotinic receptors of acetylcholine they are ion channels in. जैसे GABA receptor है is ion channel, glycine receptor ion channel. जो 5-HT3 मतलब क्या है, serotonin receptor. 5-HT3 means serotonin. So serotonin has at least 8 receptor. 5-HT1, 5-HT2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 5-HT3 receptor or serotonin receptor. But out of that 8 receptor, this 5-HT3 is a ion channel. 5-HT3 क्या होता है, ion channel होता है. बाकी सब क्या है, बाकी सब G protein coupled receptor. 5-HT3 receptor कहाँ पे होता है, it is present in the GIT and responsible for the peristalsis. So it is ion channel. क्वेश्चन इसके ऊपर आ चुका है. So 5-HT3 is a ion channel. तो क्वेश्चन 2-3 बार आया है, देखो कैसा क्वेश्चन आया है. So all serotonin receptor are the G protein coupled receptor except क्या है, 5-HT3. all G 5-HT3 or all serotonin receptor they are the examples of G protein coupled receptor except serotonin 3 receptor. okay, so serotonin has a different receptor. जो आपका जो serotonin होता है 5-HT3 मतलब 5-hydroxy tryptamine, तो उसको serotonin भी बोलते हैं. so it has a different receptor like 5-HT1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. okay, so out of that 8 5-HT receptor, 3 5-HT3 receptor is a ion channel and others are the G protein coupled. So is there any secondary messenger? No. तो ठीक है, ion channel receptor रिवाइज करो पहले. so they are ion channel receptor, they are also known as ionotropic receptor, they are present on also known as ionotropic receptor, also known as a ligand gated ion channels or type 1 receptor. okay, type 1 receptor, and they are on a cell membrane, located on a cell membrane. Effector cell is nothing but the ion channels. They are directly coupled. Example is a nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, GABA receptor, glycine receptor, 5HT3 receptor. There is no secondary messenger. And remember, they act in a millisecond. They act in a millisecond. So they are the fastest acting receptor. तो क्वेश्चन इसके ऊपर भी आ चुका है. तो which type of receptor will act in a millisecond? क्वेश्चन क्या है? Which receptor will act in a millisecond? कौन सा act होगा millisecond में? Type 1 receptor or ion channel, right? So now we'll see the type second receptor. Type second receptor कौन सा है? Type second receptor is known as a G protein coupled receptor. They are known as a G protein coupled receptor or also known as a metabotropic receptor. They are also known as a metabotropic receptor. इसके ऊपर एज इट इज क्वेश्चन आया था GPAT 2019 में. G protein coupled receptor, they are also known as metabotropic receptor. यहाँ पे देखो. So G protein coupled receptor, they are also known as a metabotropic receptor, also known as G protein coupled receptor, also known as a heptahelical receptor or serpentine receptor. Heptahelical receptor, serpentine receptor, GPCR, then metabotropic receptor, type 2 receptor. ये सब क्या है? सिनोनिम से. Type 2 receptor, they are also known as a metabotropic receptor, G protein coupled receptor, or heptahelical receptor, or serpentine receptor, or 7 transmembrane protein receptor. ये सब उनका नाम है. 7 transmembrane protein मतलब क्या है? heptahelical और serpentine. So all these are the synonyms. Question आ चुका है. How they are present on the again cell membrane. So they are linked with the effector cell. कौन सा है? Effect किसके ऊपर करेंगे? They are either linked with the enzymes or ion channels. तो वो क्या करेंगे? Activation of GPCR will either change in the enzyme function or change in the permeability of ions. They are coupled with the G protein. That's why they are known as the G protein coupled receptor. Now, what are the examples of this GPCR? So these are the examples: muscarinic acetylcholine receptors, then thyroid stimulating hormone receptor, adrenergic alpha receptor, adrenergic beta receptor. Okay, then 5HT receptor. All 1 to 8. 5HT3 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. ठीक है, एक्सेप्ट 5HT3. इसमें सब क्या है? जी प्रोटीन कपल रिसेप्टर है. सेरोटोनिन के जितने भी रिसेप्टर है, 5-हाइड्रोक्सीप्टामाइन के जितने भी रिसेप्टर है, सब क्या है? जी प्रोटीन कपल रिसेप्टर है. बट एक्सेप्ट क्या है? 5HT3. 5HT1 2 4 5 6 7 8. So all are the GPCR and only 5HT3 is an ion channel. You have to remember. Okay. Now what are the secondary messengers in the GPCR? Secondary messengers कौन है इसमें? क्वेश्चन आ चुका है, लास्ट ईयर भी आया. तो साइक्लिक AMP, साइक्लिक एडेनिन मोनोफॉस्फेट, साइक्लिक GMP, IP3 मतलब इनोसिटॉल 3 फॉस्फेट, DAG डाई असाइल ग्लिसरॉल. साइक्लिक AMP, साइक्लिक GMP, IP3, DAG, साइक्लिक AMP, साइक्लिक GMP, inositol 3 phosphate and diacyl glycerol. So they are known as the secondary messengers for GPCR. They are known as the secondary messengers for G protein coupled receptor. Okay. चार एग्जांपल याद रखो: साइक्लिक AMP, साइक्लिक GMP, IP3 एंड डाइअसाइल ग्लिसरॉल. IP3 मतलब इंडियन फार्माकोपिया 3 नहीं होता है, इट इज इनोसिटल फॉस्फेट 3, राइट? डाइअसाइल ग्लिसरॉल. तो अगर okay, and calcium is known as a tertiary messenger. Calcium को क्या बोलना है? Tertiary messenger. Last year there was a question in GPAT 2021. Following are the secondary messengers to the GPCR except. Following are the secondary messenger to the GPCR except. और सब ऑप्शन में ये थे. एक ऑप्शन ये था cyclic AMP, cyclic GMP was the first option. Inositol 3 phosphate diacyl glycerol was the second option. Third option was a calcium. And fourth option was there, all of them. So calcium is known as a tertiary messenger. So secondary messenger कौन से? DAG, IP3, cyclic AMP, cyclic GMP. Okay. But अगर आपको क्वेश्चन आता है ऐसा, so suppose they ask the question like this: following are the examples of secondary messenger in the GPCR. और उन्होंने सब एग्जांपल दिए, सब एक्सेप्ट नहीं लिखा है, टर्सरी टर्म नहीं है, सबको बोलने का सेकेंडरी मैसेंजर. अगर एक्सेप्ट है, टर्सरी मैसेंजर पूछा है तो कैल्शियम है. Now type 3 receptor, they are known as a enzyme linked receptor or enzymatic receptor, or they are also known as a kinase linked receptor. Type 3 receptor, they are enzyme linked receptor or kinase linked receptor or टायरोसिन काइनेज रिसेप्टर, यहाँ पे मैंने 3 सिनोनिम बोले आपको, यू हैव टू रिमेंबर टायरोसिन काइनेज, ओके, टायरोसिन काइनेज रिसेप्टर और काइनेज लिंक्ड रिसेप्टर और एंजाइम लिंक्ड रिसेप्टर। नाउ दे आर आल्सो प्रेजेंट ऑन अ सेल मेम्ब्रेन, वो कहाँ पे होते हैं? सेल मेम्ब्रेन के ऊपर ही उनका वास्तव्य होता है, ठीक है। अभी उसका इफेक्टर सेल कौन है? दे हैव इफेक्ट ऑन एंजाइम्स, इसमें किसमें एक्शन दिखाते हैं? एंजाइम्स के ऊपर। So they are directly coupled with the enzymes or indirectly coupled with the enzymes. What are the examples? Examples देखो, insulin receptors, growth factor receptor, cytokinin receptor. Examples से देखो, insulin receptor, growth factor, cytokinin. Okay. And what are the secondary messengers? इसमें भी कोई secondary messengers. Now we'll see the last type of receptor known as the intracellular. पहला होता है ion channel, we have seen that. Second GPCR, we have seen that. Third one is a tyrosine kinase linked receptor, we have seen that. Now fourth one is nothing but the type 4 receptor. They are also known as a nuclear receptor, receptor that regulate the gene transcription. Type 4 receptor, they are known as a nuclear receptor or receptor that regulate the gene transcription. They are also known as intracellular receptor. तो टाइप 4 मतलब क्या? इंट्रासेलुलर रिसेप्टर और न्यूक्लियर रिसेप्टर्स और रिसेप्टर दैट रेगुलेट द जीन ट्रांसक्रिप्शन और एक सिनोनिम है हार्मोनल रिसेप्टर. So there are 4 synonyms. देखो, type 4 receptor, they are also known as a nuclear receptor, also known as a receptor that regulate the gene transcription, also known as a intracellular receptor, and also known as a hormonal receptor. So where they are present? They are either present on the cytosol or nucleus of the cell membrane. कहाँ पे होता है ये? साइटोसोल मतलब साइटोप्लाज्म और न्यूक्लियस, दोनों में किसी में भी हो सकता है. इफेक्टर कौन है? जीन ट्रांसक्रिप्शन. They interact with the nucleic acid DNA RNA and will produce different gene, will produce a different protein. Now they coupled with the examples of these type 4 receptor are nothing but the steroid receptor, steroid hormone receptor and thyroid hormone receptor. थायराइड जितने भी हार्मोन्स होंगे तो हार्मोन्स रिसेप्टर, हार्मोनल रिसेप्टर, तो वो सब क्या है? टाइप 4 रिसेप्टर. एंड दैट्स व्हाई टाइप 4 रिसेप्टर इज नोन एज अ हार्मोनल रिसेप्टर. सो बिकॉज ऑल हार्मोन्स दे एक्वायर टाइप 4 रिसेप्टर. कपलिंग डीएनए से होता है उनका. एंड सेकेंडरी मैसेंजर क्या है? नन, देयर इज नो सेकेंडरी मैसेंजर्स. These are the basic 4 types of receptor. Okay, 4 type of receptor. First one is known as a fastest acting receptor, known as ion channels. Second receptor GPCR, they will take certain time. They will act in a minutes. ठीक है, कुछ मिनट में एक्ट होंगे. जैसे 1 to कुछ मिनट्स में एक्ट होंगे GPCR, right? In the third type, they will act in a again few minutes to hour. कुछ मिनटों से लेके कुछ आवर्स तक उनका इफेक्ट मिलने के लिए टाइम लगेगा, few minutes to hours. Now these will take hours और days. ये कुछ आवर्स से लेके कुछ दिन लगेंगे उनको, hours to days. So remember, nuclear receptors, they are nothing but the slowest acting receptor. यहाँ पे देखो फास्टेस्ट एक्टिंग कौन है? जी प्रोटीन कपल रिसेप्टर. क्वेश्चन उसके ऊपर आ चुका है. सॉरी, फास्टेस्ट एक्टिंग कौन है? आयन चैनल. दे एक्ट इन अ मिली सेकंड. ओके, तो ये कुछ सेकंड से लेके कुछ मिनट तक एक्ट होंगे, ठीक है. और ये कुछ मिनट से लेके आवर्स तक एक्ट होंगे. ये कुछ आवर्स से लेके डेज तक एक्ट होंगे. So it will take a time. That's why they are known as slowest acting receptor. Slowest acting receptor. Fastest acting कौन है? Ion channels. Question आ चुका है. Okay, so names, synonyms. Okay, then location is important. Then okay, then examples are important and then secondary messages. तो ये एक ही टेबल है, इसके ऊपर कम से कम 5 या 6 बार क्वेश्चन पूछा है. हर बार क्वेश्चन होता है बट मिस करते हो. You can see the examples over here again. Say ion channel. So this is the example of ligand gated ion channel. So ligand gated ion channel का example देखो. So when a agonist or drug which will interact with the ion channel, it will change the permeability. यहाँ पे क्या है? एक्स्ट्रा सेलुलर आयंस है, कैल्शियम आयंस, ठीक है. तो जैसे ये ड्रग इंटरेक्ट होता है रिसेप्टर के थ्रू, so it will open the ion channel and it will open the ion channel and calcium will move inside. अंदर जाएगा कैल्शियम. It will cause depolarization, ठीक है, depolarization. और if anions go inside, anion अगर है क्लोराइड माइनस है तो हाइपरपोलराइजेशन करेगा, हाइपरपोलराइजेशन. अगर cation है तो depolarization करेगा. Okay. Now second one is nothing but the mechanically gated ion channels. Mechanically gated ion channels. Okay. Means they are GPCR regulated ion channels or mechanically gated. You can see over sodium, calcium outside the cell, extracellular fluid, sodium, calcium also. So when the drug will interact, it will open the gate and it will move ions inside and outside. देखो यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है, सोडियम अंदर जा रहा है, कैल्शियम क्या हो रहा है, change in the permeability to the ions. That is examples of ion channel. Now we'll see the next types of receptor again. So first type of receptor is the ion channel. We have seen about ion channel. So agonist which will bind to a ion channel, agonist which will bind to a ion channel. So what will it do? It will change the permeability of ions. It will change the permeability of ions. Agonist plus receptor. So what will happen? There is a change in the permeability of ions. So either cation will go inside or anion will go inside, and there is a depolarization or hyperpolarization. That is nothing but the stimulation or depression. Now second type of receptor कौन सा है? GPCR, G protein coupled receptor. They are also known as a metabotropic receptor, also known as 7 transmembrane spanning protein, also known as a serpentine receptor, also known as a heptahelical receptor. तो इनको इतना सारा सेम नेम्स है. और G protein coupled receptor, bind to bind to inner surface. कहाँ पे होते हैं? Inner surface of plasma membrane, and there are the 3 subunits of G protein. Okay. So alpha subunit, beta subunit and gamma subunit, they are all in a association, एक के साथ रहते हैं. So upon a drug which will interact with the GPCR, so there is a dissociation of these 3 subunits. Upon binding to a ligand, these subunits will be dissociated and they act as secondary messenger. ये secondary messenger produce करते हैं. Okay, and causes changes in the cell function. Now G proteins, they are given name G protein. Why? Because they interact with the guanosine nucleotide like GTP, guanosine triphosphate, GDP, guanosine triphosphate. Okay. Now G protein, कितने टाइप के होते हैं G protein? There are 3 types of G protein. Which are these? These are nothing but types of G protein. GS, GI, GQ. यहाँ पे 3 टाइप का दिखाया है. GS, GQ, GI. GS मतलब G protein which is stimulatory. GI मतलब G protein which is inhibitory. And GQ मतलब these are the protein again stimulatory. So GS, GQ they are stimulatory and GI is inhibitory. G protein coupled receptor का क्या होता है? So these are the receptor which are present on the inner surface of cell membrane. They are coupled with the G proteins. G proteins के subunit होते हैं alpha, beta, gamma. They are present in the association. So they are in a association. They are in a combined form. When a ligand or drug will interact with the GPCR, they will be dissociated, and there is a there is generation of secondary messenger. G proteins are of 3 types: GI, GS, GQ. GI and GS are stimulatory in GS and GQ are stimulatory in nature, and GI is inhibitory in nature. They are known as G protein because they interact with the guanosine nucleotides. 3 टाइप के होते हैं GS, GQ. So GQ and GS are stimulatory in nature. GI is inhibitory in nature, right? Now okay, so they interact. They produces the secondary messenger, and secondary messenger, after the production of secondary messenger, so they act via 3 pathways. So they are known as the effector pathway. They are known as the effector pathway. Effect कैसे करेंगे? Effector pathways of GPCR. So either they will activate adenyl cyclase, they will activate the phospholipase C, or they will activate the ion channels. So first pathway is the adenyl cyclase pathway. Agent which combines with the GPCR then stimulate the adenyl cyclase, and stimulation of adenyl cyclase causes accumulation of cyclic AMP inside the cell. जो drug या फिर जो भी agent या फिर जो भी ligand है, so that will bind to GPCR. Okay, will dissociate the subunits. Dissociate the subunit, and then so a drug or a ligand which will activate or which will interact with the G protein, there is a dissociation of these subunits of G protein, Then there is a generation of secondary messenger. Okay? That secondary messenger stimulate either GS, GI, GQ. Okay? Then these act via secondary pathways or they act via G proteins effector pathway. वो अगर G स्टिमुलेट हो गया, जैसे G प्रोटीन यस वाला जो है वो एक्टिवेट हो गया, क्या होगा? GQ एक्टिवेट हो गया तो क्या होगा? GI एक्टिवेट हो गया तो क्या होगा? स्टिमुलेशन ऑफ G प्रोटीन they act via effector pathway. First one is a adenyl cyclase pathway. So activation of G stimulation, GS, okay, will activate the adenyl cyclase. GS will be released, it will activate the adenyl cyclase pathway and stimulation of adenyl cyclase. This is the one enzyme, stimulation of adenyl cyclase. So this enzyme convert ATP. इसका काम क्या होता है कि ATP का कन्वर्ट होता है ATP will be converted into cyclic AMP. ATP will be converted into cyclic AMP. So this site adenyl cyclase enzyme will convert ATP into cyclic AMP. That leads to increased cyclic AMP level in the cell, and they act via. Then after that they act via protein kinase, which causes the phosphorylation of certain proteins inside the cell. सेल के अंदर जो प्रोटीन होता है उसका फॉस्फोरिलेशन करेगा, फॉस्फेट ग्रुप ऐड कर देगा एंड देन रेगुलेट द सेल फंक्शन. उसके कारण क्या होगा? इधर कॉन्ट्रैक्शन होगा या फिर रिलैक्सेशन होगा या फिर लिपोलाइसिस होगा या फिर हार्मोन सिंथेसिस होगा. So normally stimulatory G protein activate the adenyl cyclase enzyme, which leads to increased intracellular cyclic AMP level, and then which causes the phosphorylation of certain proteins in the cell, and that leads to actions like either contraction, relaxation, lipolysis, or hormone synthesis. So this is the one pathway known as the adenyl cyclase pathway. Second is the phospholipase C pathway. Okay? So after interaction with the G protein, second effector pathway is the phospholipase C. So there is a stimulation of phospholipase C, which encourages the phospholipase C or inositol DHE pathway. It is also known as a phospholipase C pathway or inositol 3-phosphate and diacylglycerol pathway. So activation of phospholipase C causes the formation of inositol 3-phosphate from inositol diphosphate and DAG diacylglycerol from the membrane phosphate. In IP3 or inositol 3-phosphate will mobilize the intracellular calcium. कैल्शियम जो होता है आपके सेल के अंदर में भी कैल्शियम स्टोर होता है. सेल के अंदर कहाँ पे स्टोर होता है कैल्शियम? सेल के अंदर जो है आपका एंडोप्लाज्मिक रेटिकुलम होता है. ओके, सो सेल के अंदर एंडोप्लाज्मिक रेटिकुलम नोन एज द स्मूथ एंडोप्लाज्मिक रेटिकुलम. In the smooth endoplasmic reticulum there is a calcium storage. So this IP3 will mobilize calcium or will bring about the calcium from endoplasmic reticulum to the cytosol, and this increased calcium level in the cytosol will cause either will bring about the secretions, will cause contractions or metabolism, increase in the metabolism or hyperpolarization, right? And जो DAG बनता है diacylglycerol from the membrane phospholipids, it will activate the protein kinase C and which regulate the cell function. Now this is the second pathway. Third pathway is nothing but the ion channels. The iron होगा है but ये ion है. So ion channels हो गए. So G protein activation leads to particularly G inhibitory. तो G stimulatory क्या करता है? Adenyl cyclase को activate करता है. GQ क्या करता है? Phospholipase C को activate करता है. And G inhibitory जो होता है GI, so it will activate the ion channels. So transmit the signal to the some ion channels, causing opening or closing, result in the depolarization or hyperpolarization. That is okay. Now G protein coupled receptor they act via 3 effector pathway. आपको सिर्फ यहाँ पे इतना याद रखना है. एक तो adenyl cyclase pathway होता है, इसमें क्या होता है कि cyclic AMP लेवल बढ़ जाता है after activation of adenyl cyclase. cyclic AMP लेवल अगर सेल में बढ़ गया फिर प्रोटीन काइनेज एक्टिवेट हो जाता है, फॉस्फोरिलेशन करता है एंड सेल का फंक्शन रेगुलेट करता है, लाइक कॉन्ट्रैक्शन, रिलैक्सेशन, लिपोलाइसिस, हार्मोन सिंथेसिस. दूसरा होता है फॉस्फोलाइपेज सी IP3 DHE पाथवे. एक्टिवेशन ऑफ जी प्रोटीन रिजल्ट इन द एक्टिवेशन ऑफ फॉस्फोलाइपेज सी which leads to formation of IP3 from IP2, that is inositol diphosphate to inositol triphosphate, then diacylglycerol from membrane phospholipids. IP3 का काम क्या है? It will mobilize the intracellular calcium from the sarcoplasmic reticulum to the cytosol, which will cause secretion, contraction, metabolism, hyperpolarization, etc. Now DAG जो होता है that will cause protein activation of protein kinase C which regulate the cell function. Ion channel का भी होता है. Ion channel के साथ में ये protein coupled receptor coupled होते हैं. They will either change in the permeability of ions. These are the effector pathway. Now next one is you can see over here. यहाँ पे भी देख सकते हो आप. So G protein coupled receptor drug combine with the receptor to form a drug receptor complex. RLC. ठीक है. Receptor drug complex. D plus R drug plus receptor will form a drug receptor complex will activate the G protein. Now G proteins there are three types. First one is GS, G stimulatory. Second one is GI, G inhibitory, and third one is GQ. Again it is a stimulatory. तो देखो ड्रग आपका रिसेप्टर के साथ में कंबाइन होगा. कंबाइन होने के बाद में क्या होगा फिर? इट विल कंबाइन विद द रिसेप्टर. इट विल फॉर्म अ ड्रग रिसेप्टर कॉम्प्लेक्स and it will activate the G protein. So G proteins are three types. First one होता है stimulatory GS. Second one होता है G inhibitory. And third one होता है third is nothing but the GQ. So GQ is also stimulatory in nature. Now activation of G stimulatory result in the activation of G protein and which activate the adenyl cyclase. AC मतलब adenyl cyclase, which will convert ATP into cyclic AMP. Now increase the cyclic AMP, cyclic adenine monophosphate in the cell will cause stimulation of protein kinase. Okay, and after that there is an effect like contraction, relaxation. Now activation of G inhibitory protein. Okay, there is no generation of any secondary messenger. Okay, they are directly coupled with the ion channels, opening of ion channels, and you will get an effect. For example, cardiac inhibitory effect of GPCR. Now third one is nothing but the GQ, stimulation of GQ. Stimulation of GQ results in the activation of GQ proteins which activate the phospholipase C enzyme. इसका काम क्या है? It will convert IP2 inositol phosphate 2. यहाँ पे IP2 होता है. Inositol phosphate 2 will be converted to inositol phosphate. Third type का जो G protein होता है, that is known as GQ. GQ का stimulation अगर होगा, what will happen? There is a stimulation of phospholipase C. Phospholipase C अभी इसका नाम ही है phospholipase. Phospho मतलब क्या है? Phospholipids. Lipase मतलब क्या है? ब्रेक डाउन करने वाला. Phospholipid को ब्रेक डाउन करने वाला एंजाइम. ये phospholipid को ब्रेक डाउन करेगा. That will convert. सबसे पहले क्या करेगा? So from the membrane phospholipids there is a generation of diacylglycerol. तो membrane phospholipid से क्या बनेगा? Diacylglycerol. And there is a conversion of IP2. ठीक है, IP2. IP2 मतलब क्या? Inositol phosphate. Inositol diphosphate. IP2 to it will convert IP2 into IP3. Inositol triphosphate. Now, inositol triphosphate will mobilize the calcium present in the sarcoplasmic reticulum and will stimulate the protein kinase. DAG will also stimulate the protein kinase. Increase the calcium will also stimulate the protein kinase, and then there will be effect. So you have to remember there are three pathways. Effector pathway. इसको क्या बोलेंगे? Effector pathway. These are known as the effector pathway. So first is nothing but the activation of adenyl cyclase. Second one is nothing but the ion channel. Second one is nothing but the activation of phospholipase C or DAG pathway. Phospholipase C, DAG, IP3 pathway. पहला pathway कौन सा है? Effector pathway is adenyl cyclase. Second one is nothing but the phospholipase C and the IP3 DAG pathway. Then third one is nothing but the ion channels. That's how G protein coupled receptor act. So activation of G protein result in the either activation of adenyl cyclase, which is leads to mainly stimulatory action. Activation of G protein leads to activation of phospholipase activity, which is again stimulatory in nature. Activation of G protein receptor result in the activation or suppression of ion channels, mostly inhibitory in nature. Okay, now you can see over here again. जैसे ये सेल मेम्ब्रेन है आपका and this is G protein coupled receptor. So agonist जो है agonist drug it will interact with the G protein. So for example if G stimulatory protein is a involved. Okay, so it will convert GTP into GDP, and activation of adenylyl cyclase. Activation of adenylyl cyclase will convert ATP into cyclic AMP. Okay, and there is a protein kinase. Because cyclic AMP will stimulate the protein kinase enzyme, will cause phosphorylation of certain. The protein kinase क्या करला phosphorylation of certain enzymes and proteins, and that leads to cellular repair. And protein kinase also stimulate the troponin to cause contraction. So this is the one pathway. If G stimulatory is there, now if G inhibitory is there, ठीक है, और GQ कैसे करता है? G inhibitory तो आयन चैनल होता है, और सेल मेम्ब्रेन, तो GPCR receptor आपका agonist will interact with the receptor. GQ protein will be stimulated, so it will activate the phospholipase C enzyme. There is generation of inositol 3 phosphate and diacyl glycerol. Inositol 3 phosphate क्या करेगा? It will release intracellular calcium stored in the sarcoplasmic reticulum. This intracellular calcium will stimulate the protein kinase C, and diacyl glycerol will also stimulate the protein kinase C. Protein kinase C will bring about the phosphorylation of certain proteins in the cell, and that leads to either contraction, secretion, or enzyme activation. That is the cellular results. So that's how GPCR they act. Now third type होता है आपका enzyme का, sorry, आपका receptor का. Third type of receptor is nothing but the enzyme receptor. They are also known as the tyrosine kinase receptor or kinase ligand receptor. Okay, they have two sides, extracellular ligand binding site. तो drug binding site कहाँ पे होता है? Extracellular and intracellular domain site for catalytic activity. They are linked by intracellular domain and extracellular domain. मतलब जो आउटसाइड द पार्ट होता है, जिसके आउटसाइड सेल मेम्ब्रेन के आउटसाइड एक पार्ट होता है, उसको बोलते हैं एक्स्ट्रा सेलुलर डोमेन और एक्स्ट्रा सेलुलर बाइंडिंग साइट टू विच ड्रग विल बाइंड, and this extracellular binding site is linked with the intracellular binding site by one peptide, single peptide. Binding of agonist or ligand will cause autophosphorylation of intracellular domain. In turn, phosphorylation of various intracellular proteins result in the response. Fourth type of receptor is nothing but the intracellular receptor. Fourth type cause of the intracellular. Now it is known as a hormonal receptor or receptor that regulate the gene transcription factors. Now agonist or drug, जो भी agonist drug होगा इसको जो एक्टिवेट करेगा वो क्या करेगा? फिर activate the receptor, and in this agonist receptor complex which is transported in the nucleus and will interact with the DNA and regulate the gene transcription. तो जो जीन है, जैसे प्रोटीन सिंथेसिस के लिए क्या लगता है आपको? पर्टिकुलर जीन लगता है, कोई भी मतलब एनी प्रोटीन विच इज हैज टू बी मेड इन द बॉडी. आपके बॉडी में कोई भी प्रोटीन बनाना है तो वो किसके अकॉर्डिंगली बनेगा? आपके जीन के अकॉर्डिंगली. जीन के ऊपर क्या होता है? डीएनए सीक्वेंस. इंट्रासेलुलर रिसेप्टर मतलब ड्रग इंटरेक्ट विद इंट्रासेलुलर रिसेप्टर, they will interact with the DNA, will change the gene transcription, and that increase or decrease the specific protein to regulate the activity of. Okay, for example is hormonal receptors or vitamin D receptors. Thyroid hormone receptor, vitamin D receptor, hormonal receptor, they are the type of intracellular receptor. You can see over here how enzymatic receptor will act. Enzyme receptor कैसे act करेंगे? The enzyme receptor drug or agonist bind to a extracellular domain of enzyme receptor. Okay, let's say for example insulin receptor is a tyrosine kinase linked receptor or enzyme receptor. तो इंसुलिन क्या करेगा? इसके एक्स्ट्रासेलुलर डोमेन के ऊपर बाइंड करेगा. तो इंसुलिन इज अ लिगैंड और ड्रग that result in the autophosphorylation of receptor, activation of tyrosine kinase, that is a serine kinase and gluconyl kinase. It causes the entry of glucose from extracellular space to intracellular space. इंसुलिन का काम क्या है करना है? इंसुलिन का काम है कि इट इज हार्मोन रिस्पॉन्सिबल फॉर द यूटिलाइजेशन ऑफ ग्लूकोज. अभी जो आपने ग्लूकोज खाया, जो शुगर खाई आपने, ब्लड में ग्लूकोज बढ़ गया, आपके मसल सेल जो थे वहाँ पे क्या है? उनका काम है, एनर्जी कहाँ पे लगने वाला है? मसल सेल में लगने वाला है. लेकिन ग्लूकोज कहाँ पे? ब्लड में. तो ग्लूकोज हैज टू एंटर फ्रॉम एक्स्ट्रासेलुलर फ्लूइड टू इंट्रासेलुलर फ्लूइड. तो ग्लूकोज अगर बाहर है तो बाहर क्या काम का है? सेल के अंदर जाना चाहिए ना, तभी उसका एनर्जी के लिए यूटिलाइजेशन कर सकते हैं. ठीक है. सो दैट ट्रांसपोर्ट ऑफ glucose from extracellular to intracellular. That is a function of insulin. Okay, insulin activate the insulin receptor, which is a type of kinase linked receptor. Okay, and that results in the autophosphorylation, activation of tyrosine kinase, entry of glucose inside the cell. There is the insulin receptor, platelet derived growth factor, epidermal growth factor. So that's how it will act. Now you can see last intracellular receptor. जो भी drug है ligand है, it will bind to intracellular receptor, drug receptor complex. So it will be transported into the cell, attachment with the responsive DNA. DNA के ऊपर attach होगा, formation of enzyme, structural protein, gene expression. Gene बनाएगा and then synthesis of proteins or decreasing the synthesis of protein. तो उसके type examples of these receptor is मतलब estrogen, progesterone, androgen receptor. So these are the types of receptor. There are 4 type of receptor. I have told you. 4 टाइप के रिसेप्टर होते हैं. I have told you. G प्रोटीन पहला होता है आयन चैनल्स, दूसरा होता है G पोल प्रोटीन कपल रिसेप्टर. एक बार फिर से रिवाइज करो उसको, जस्ट एक मिनट रिवाइज करो इसको. Okay, so these are the receptors. So types of receptor. Type 1 receptor is known as ion channels. They act in a millisecond. They are also known as ionotropic receptor or ligand gated ion channels. They are present on the cell membrane. Effector is the channel ion channels. Example is nicotinic acetylcholine receptor, GABA receptor, glycine receptor, 5-HT3 receptor. Second type of receptor is the G protein coupled receptor. They are also known as metabotropic receptor or G protein coupled receptor or heptahelical receptor or serpentine receptor or 7 transmembrane protein receptor. Okay, they are also present on the cell membrane. Their effector is nothing but either enzymes or ion channels. They are coupled with the G protein, and example is nothing but the muscarinic receptors, thyroid stimulating hormone receptor, histamine 2 receptors, alpha beta adrenal receptors, 5-HT 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 receptor. सेकेंडरी मैसेंजर होता है साइक्लिक जीएमपी IP3DAG. टर्शियरी होता है कैल्शियम, राइट. टाइप 3 रिसेप्टर होता है काइनेज लिंक्ड और टायरोसिन काइनेज लिंक्ड और एंजाइम लिंक्ड रिसेप्टर. और यू कैन से they are present on the cell membrane. Their effector is nothing but the enzyme. They are coupled directly or indirectly. Example is insulin receptor, growth hormone receptor, and cytokinin receptor. फोर्थ टाइप का रिसेप्टर होता है इंट्रासेलुलर रिसेप्टर और न्यूक्लियर रिसेप्टर और रिसेप्टर that regulate the gene transcription. So they are present in the inside the cell. Inside the cell मतलब न्यूक्लियस में होगा या फिर साइटोसोल में होगा. And effector कौन है? जीन ट्रांसक्रिप्शन. They are coupled हुआ है DNA. Example is steroid and thyroid hormone receptor. ठीक है, ये अगेन मैंने डिवाइस कर दिया आपको. Now we'll see the terms related to receptors. रिसेप्टर के रिलेटेड टर्म्स कितने हैं वो देखते हैं. Terms related to receptor. So first term is nothing but the agonist. Important terms to understand the drug receptor interaction. तो agonist किसको बोलेंगे, antagonist किसको बोलेंगे, inverse agonist किसको बोलेंगे. So first one is nothing but the agonist. Agonist, what is agonist? It is a drug which okay which stimulate the receptor and produces the pharmacological action after binding to a. तो agonist क्या है? Agonist कोई भी ड्रग हो सकता है या फिर कोई भी केमिकल हो सकता है which binds with the receptor and initiates or shows pharmacological action. So agonist is a drug or chemical which will combine with the receptor and will produce a pharmacological action. So it is also known as a full agonist. इसको क्या बोलते हैं? Full agonist. Full agonist. So full agonist will interact with the receptor and will produce full pharmacological action. So agonist will have high affinity. होगा उसको affinity. Affinity मतलब क्या है? It is the ability of drug to combine with the receptor. Affinity मतलब क्या होता है कि ability or it is the capacity or capability of drug to combine with the receptor is nothing but the affinity. Okay, so agonist will have a high affinity and also have a intrinsic activity. तो जो रिसेप्टर के ऊपर एगोनिस्ट जब कंबाइन होगा तो फार्माकोलॉजिकल एक्शन मिलेगा आपको. तो फुल एगोनिस्ट विल प्रोड्यूस अ फुल फार्माकोलॉजिकल. तो फुल एगोनिस्ट विल हैव अ हाई एफिनिटी एंड हाई इंट्रिंसिक. एफिनिटी क्या होता है? इट इज द एबिलिटी ऑफ ड्रग टू कंबाइन विद द रिसेप्टर. एंड इंट्रिंसिक एक्टिविटी क्या होता है? इट इज द एबिलिटी टू प्रोड्यूस अ फार्माकोलॉजिकल इफेक्ट आफ्टर कंबाइनिंग विद द रिसेप्टर. एफिनिटी मतलब एबिलिटी टू कंबाइन विद द रिसेप्टर. इंट्रिंसिक एक्टिविटी मतलब आफ्टर कंबाइनिंग it will produce a pharmacological effect. Efficacy, intrinsic activity is also known as efficacy. So affinity means ability to combine with the receptor. Ability of drug to combine with the receptor is affinity, and after combining, the ability to produce the pharmacological effect is known as the intrinsic activity. So your agonist will have high affinity as well as high efficacy or high intrinsic activity. You have to remember. Now you can say full agonist or agonist will have इंट्रिंसिक एक्टिविटी +1. इसका इंट्रिंसिक एक्टिविटी क्या होता है? पॉजिटिव होता है. इट विल प्रोड्यूस अ इफेक्ट, दैट्स व्हाई पॉजिटिव, राइट? नाउ सेकंड विल सी. सेकंड वन इज नोन एज अ पार्शियल एगोनिस्ट. पार्शियल एगोनिस्ट कौन है? सो अगेन ड्रग. सो अगेन ए ड्रग, it has a equal or less affinity as that of the pure agonist or full agonist, but it has a less intrinsic activity. इसका नाम क्या है? पार्शियल. तो पार्शियल मतलब क्या? पार्शियली एक्टिविटी है. तो इट हैज इक्वल एफिनिटी. इट मे हैव स्ट्रॉन्ग एफिनिटी एज दैट ऑफ द एगोनिस्ट, but definitely it has a less pharmacological activity, so less intrinsic activity or less efficacy than pure agonist. Okay, so for example, the agonist का example कौन है? agonist का example यहाँ पे लिखा नहीं, मैं example बताता हूँ. So there are a lot of examples which are agonists. For example, noradrenaline is agonist to your alpha receptor, beta receptor. Okay, acetylcholine is agonist to your muscarinic receptor, your nicotinic receptor. Histamine is agonist to all histaminic receptor. Okay, serotonin is agonist to all serotonin receptor. So it will produce full pharmacological effect. It has a high affinity, it has a high intrinsic activity, and will produce a pharmacological effect. But partial agonist क्या करता है? But partial agonist again it will have a high affinity. Okay, it will have a high affinity, but it will have only partial activity. So partial agonist क्या है? So it has a high affinity as that like a pure agonist, but definitely less intrinsic activity. क्या होगा इसका intrinsic activity है? For example, pindolol is a partial agonist of beta 1 receptor. So it will stimulate, it will just activate the receptor, but it will not produce pharmacological action. So that's why intrinsic activity of partial agonist, you can say, lies between +1 to -1. तो देखो एगोनिस्ट का इंट्रिंसिक एक्टिविटी क्या है? +1. अब ये फुल एगोनिस्ट. पार्शियल एगोनिस्ट का एक्टिविटी कहाँ पे है? इन बिटवीन -1 to +1, मतलब कम है. ओके, कम है. Now third term is inverse agonist. So it can also activate the receptor but produces the opposite action to that of the pure agonist. Inverse मतलब क्या है? Inverse मतलब opposite. It will produce opposite action. For example, beta carbolin is an inverse agonist to the benzodiazepine receptor. तो benzodiazepine receptor का agonist कौन है? Diazepam. Diazepam is the agonist to the benzodiazepine receptor. तो diazepam ने अगर benzodiazepine receptor को stimulate किया तो क्या होगा? There is a opening of chloride ion channels and there is a CNS depression. ठीक है? Diazepam is a CNS depression, act as a diazepam receptor agonist. Yeah, they are full agonist. Now beta carbolin क्या है? It is a inverse agonist. Beta carbolin is a inverse agonist, so it will also have same affinity to the benzodiazepine receptor as that of the diazepam, but activity will be different. It will have a stimulant activity. तो डायजिपम क्या है? फुल एगोनिस्ट है. ठीक है, तो ये क्या करेगा? उसको डिप्रेस करेगा, बेंजोडाइजेपिन को स्टिमुलेट करके उसको डिप्रेस करेगा. लेकिन बीटा कार्बोलिन क्या है? बीटा कार्बोलिन इज इनवर्स एगोनिस्ट, so it will also stimulate the benzodiazepine receptor, but it will cause stimulation. It will cause CNS stimulation. So benzodiazepine is a CNS depressant, beta carbolin is a CNS stimulant. You can say inverse agonist will have intrinsic activity in a negative -1. Inverse agonist will have intrinsic activity in a negative, there is a -1, right? देखो फुल एगोनिस्ट का इंट्रिंसिक एक्टिविटी क्या है? +1. पार्शियल एगोनिस्ट का इंट्रिंसिक एक्टिविटी क्या है? -1 to +1. इनवर्स एगोनिस्ट का इंट्रिंसिक एक्टिविटी -1. अभी एंटागोनिस्ट देखेंगे, एंटागोनिस्ट. So it is a drug which will combine with the receptor and will not produce any pharmacological effect. What will it do? It will cause blockage of the receptor. So antagonist has the same affinity to that of the pure agonist, but very less or poor or no intrinsic activity. No intrinsic activity. तो एंटागोनिस्ट क्या है, वो भी कंबाइन होता है. तो एगोनिस्ट क्या है, वो भी कंबाइन होता है. पार्शियल का एगोनिस्ट क्या है, वो भी कंबाइन होता है किसी वक्त में रिसेप्टर का. बट एंटागोनिस्ट क्या है, it will combine and it will block the receptor. It will not have any intrinsic activity. So intrinsic activity of antagonist is a 0. Right? तो देखो सिंपल टर्म्स है, I will explain you again. So agonist क्या है, agonist is any drug or any chemical that will combine with the receptor and will produce a pharmacological action. So it has a high affinity and high intrinsic activity or high pharmacological activity or high efficacy. Okay? These are the symptoms. Now partial agonist क्या है, so again it is a drug which will have less or equal affinity as that of the pure agonist, but intrinsic activity will be less as that of the pure agonist. For example, pindolol क्या है, it is a partial agonist. Full agonist कौन है, it is a partial agonist to the beta 1 receptor. Pindolol is a partial agonist to the beta 1 receptor. Full agonist कौन है, full agonist कौन है, यहाँ पे noradrenaline या फिर isoprenylin. So that is a full agonist. So it will only combine with the receptor, but activity will not be full. That's why intrinsic activity is in between -2, -1 to -1 to +1. So partial agonist. Inverse agonist क्या है, it is again a drug which can combine with the receptor, and produces the different action or opposite action. Now antagonist क्या है, antagonist. So antagonist is again a drug which will combine with the receptor, okay, which will combine with the receptor, but will not produce any kind of activity because receptor blockage. So agonist, partial agonist, okay, inverse agonist and antagonist. ये टर्म्स आपको फटाक से आपको याद होना चाहिए. बेसिक्स इज इम्पोर्टेंट. बेसिक क्या है, ये बेसिक है सब कुछ. एगोनिस्ट क्या है, एंटागोनिस्ट क्या है, पार्शियल एगोनिस्ट क्या है, इनवर्स एगोनिस्ट क्या है. एगोनिस्ट विल कंबाइन विद द रिसेप्टर, it has a high affinity, high intrinsic activity, will produce a full pharmacological effect, that is the intrinsic activity is a +1. Partial agonist क्या है, it is a drug which will combine with the receptor, okay, it may have equal or less affinity as that of the pure agonist, but definitely it has a less pharmacological activity or less efficacy or less intrinsic activity. For example याद रखो, pindolol is a partial agonist to the beta 1 receptor, so it has a intrinsic activity in a range of -1 to +1. Now, inverse agonist is again a drug which will combine with the receptor, okay, so but it will produce opposite action to that of the pure agonist. ठीक है, जैसे प्योर एगोनिस्ट कौन है, बेंजोडाइजेपिन रिसेप्टर को यहाँ पे डाइज़ेपाम या फिर लोरेज़ेपाम, टेमाज़ेपाम, कौन सा भी लियो, और बीटा. So diazepam after stimulating the beta this benzodiazepine receptor will cause CNS depression. Okay, but beta carbolin is an inverse agonist to the benzodiazepine receptor. So beta carbolin will combine with the benzodiazepine receptor, will produce stimulation. Right? So intrinsic activity is -1 because it is on the opposite side. Antagonist क्या है? These are the drug which will combine with the receptor and will cause blockage of receptor, but will not produce any pharmacological. Okay, so it means it will not have any intrinsic activity. अभी intrinsic activity नहीं है, उसका मतलब क्या है? Zero है. It will only produce receptor blockage. Now we'll see the terms again. You can see over here. So if you plot a receptor response versus drug concentration, अगर आपने drug concentration x axis पे ले लिया और रिसेप्टर का रिस्पॉन्स ले लिया y एक्सिस पे, आपको कुछ टर्म्स मिलेंगे. तो फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल दिस इज लाइन, दिस डॉटेड लाइन इज नथिंग बट द बेसल एक्टिविटी. ये जो डॉटेड लाइन है आपका ग्रीन वाला डॉटेड लाइन, तो ये ब्लू वाला लाइन नोन एज अ बेसल एक्टिविटी. बेसल एक्टिविटी मतलब क्या है? बेसल एक्टिविटी मींस व्हेन देयर इज नो एनी एगोनिस्ट और एंटागोनिस्ट और एनी पार्शियल एगोनिस्ट विद द रिसेप्टर. रिसेप्टर क्या है, अभी फ्री है, रिसेप्टर फ्री है तो बेसल एक्टिविटी क्या है, so that is known as basal activity. When receptor is free, so basal activity, ये जो है basal activity at this, that means receptor is free. What is agonist? Agonist is a drug which will combine with the receptor, or full agonist is the drug which will combine with the receptor and will produce full action. So it has a high affinity and high intrinsic activity. Okay, for example, noradrenaline to its receptor alpha and beta receptor. Okay, or histamine to its receptor, then dopamine to receptor. Okay, full agonist. Now what do you mean by partial agonist? So partial agonist is a drug which will interact with the receptor and will produce only partial action. It will also combine with the receptor, but it will not produce full action. So known as a partial agonist. Example is a pindolol is a partial agonist to the beta receptor. Okay. Again, pentazocine is also partial agonist to the mu receptor. ऐसा नहीं कि सिर्फ एक ही एग्जांपल, और भी कुछ एग्जांपल्स होते हैं. So remember, pentazocine is a partial agonist to the mu receptor. क्वेश्चन उसके ऊपर आ चुका. फुल एगोनिस्ट हो गया, पार्शियल एगोनिस्ट हो गया. थर्ड वन इज इनवर्स एगोनिस्ट. What is inverse agonist? A drug which will combine with the receptor will produce opposite action to that of the full agonist. Opposite action to that of the full agonist. मान लीजिए कि ये कौन सा रिसेप्टर है आपका, बेंजोडाइजिपिन रिसेप्टर है. तो डाइजिपम क्या है, डाइजिपम फुल एगोनिस्ट है. इट विल कंबाइन विद द बेंजोडाइजिपिन रिसेप्टर एंड विल प्रोड्यूस सीएनएस डिप्रेशन. तो बेंजोडाइजिपिन जो है वो फुल एगोनिस्ट है, सीएनएस डिप्रेशन करेगा. ठीक है, डाइजिपम. लेकिन बीटा कार्बोलिन क्या है, इनवर्स एगोनिस्ट है. तो ये डिप्रेशन करता है तो ये स्टिमुलेशन करेगा. सो दैट इज इनवर्स एगोनिस्ट. बेंजोडाइजिपिन डाइजिपम will produce depression effect on CNS upon combining with the benzodiazepine receptor. But beta carbolin will also combine with the benzodiazepine receptor but will produce CNS stimulation. Now what do you mean by antagonist? So antagonist is a drug which will combine with the receptor and will block the receptor. It will also combine with the receptor but it will not produce any effect. ठीक है, तो देखो एंटागोनिस्ट जो है वो कहाँ पे एग्जैक्टली सिमिलर टू बेसल एक्टिविटी. तो एंटागोनिस्ट will block the receptor, will also combine with the receptor, but will not produce either stimulation or either depression. So it will cause only blockage of receptor. So this antagonist will block the receptor only. Is that clear or not? समझ में आया? Now again, there are terms known as a potentiation, then competitive antagonism and non-competitive antagonism. Now if you plot a response versus log dose, if you plot a log dose versus response, मतलब क्या, log dose मतलब क्या है, यहाँ पे dose of drug, ठीक है, dose of drug on x axis and percentage of response on a y axis, ये आपने plot किया. Okay, now first this is known as a full agonist. ये क्या है, full agonist. So full agonist will combine with the receptor and will produce a maximal effect. क्या है, maximal effect. It will produce a maximal effect. It will produce a maximal. That is a full agonist. If any another drug is there, which will also produce a maximal effect, but the dose required of that drug is very less. मान लीजिए फुल एगोनिस्ट का डोज लगता है आपको 10 मिलीग्राम और दूसरा एक ड्रग है जो सिर्फ 5 मिलीग्राम है. ये सिर्फ 5 मिलीग्राम है लेकिन सेम एक्शन दिखाता है, उतना ही एक्शन दिखाएगा. The action produced by full agonist of 10 milligram dose and another drug is there which will produce same action at a 5 milligram dose. So what do you know? It is known as a potentiation and that is nothing but the, so you can say, जैसे मान लीजिए ये full agonist जो है it is A, इसको नाम देते हैं अपन A और इसको नाम देंगे अपन B. So you can say drug B is a more potent than drug A. Drug B is a more potent than drug A. So what is that? Potentiation. Potentiation means what? So if less dose of drug is required to produce a pharmacological effect. If less, ठीक है, यहाँ पे देखो मान लीजिए कि यहाँ पे 10 मिलीग्राम डोज है, यहाँ पे कितना है 2 मिलीग्राम. ओके, तो 10 मिलीग्राम डोज वाला जो ड्रग है दैट इज एगोनिस्ट, ये क्या करता है, मैक्सिमल इफेक्ट दिखाता है. बट दूसरा एक ड्रग है जो 2 मिलीग्राम में ही आपका मैक्सिमल इफेक्ट है. तो यू कैन से ये 2 मिलीग्राम वाला ड्रग जो है वो क्या है, ज़्यादा पोटेंट है. इट इज़ अ मोर पोटेंट. So if less dose is required to produce the same pharmacological action, which is normally produced by higher dose of drug, known as a more potent drug or potentiation. This one is a full agonist. Okay. Suppose antagonist is there. Antagonists are of two types. First one is a competitive antagonist. पहला क्या है competitive antagonist. Competitive competitive antagonist will have similar structure to that of the full agonist. Full agonist की जैसे ही structure होगा उसका, and that's why it will shift a log dose versus response curve to the right side parallelly. Question आ चुका है. Okay. Following type of antagonist will shift a log dose response curve towards the right side parallelly. पैरेलल शिफ्ट कौन करेगा? लॉग डोज को. लॉग डोज कर्व जो है वो पैरेलल शिफ्ट कौन करेगा? मतलब ये फुल एगोनिस्ट है, ये इसने इधर शिफ्ट किया है, ये कॉम्पिटिटिव एंटागोनिस्ट है और पैरेलली शिफ्ट किया ना, देखो यार. तो कॉम्पिटिटिव एंटागोनिस्ट विल हैव अ सिमिलर स्ट्रक्चर विद द फुल एगोनिस्ट. दिस कॉम्पिटिटिव एंटागोनिस्ट विल हैव अ सिमिलर स्ट्रक्चर विद द फुल एगोनिस्ट एंड विल शिफ्ट डोज रिस्पांस कर्व टुवर्ड्स द राइट साइड पैरेलली. यहाँ पे देखो रिस्पांस तो अभी उतना ही है, लेकिन डोज क्या है? डोज ज्यादा लग रहा है, मतलब कॉम्पिटिटिव कंपटीशन चल रहा है. इसके साथ में कंपटीशन चल रहा है, इसका और इसका दोनों का. नहीं मैं पकड़ूंगा रिसेप्टर को, ये बोलता है नहीं मैं पकड़ूंगा. तो कॉम्पिटिटिव एंटागोनिस्ट, राइट. नाउ अनदर concept, non competitive antagonist or non competitive antagonism. Non competitive antagonist will not have similar structure with that of the full agonist. Okay, but it will also shift dose response curve towards the right side. ये भी क्या करेगा? राइट साइड के ऊपर डोज रिस्पांस कर्व को लेके जाएगा, बट नॉट पैरेलली. पैरेलल है क्या? नहीं. सो कॉम्पिटिटिव एंटागोनिस्ट विल शिफ्ट डोज रिस्पांस कर्व टुवर्ड्स द राइट साइड पैरेलली. नॉन कॉम्पिटिटिव एंटागोनिस्ट विल आल्सो शिफ्ट डोज रिस्पांस कर्व टुवर्ड्स द राइट साइड बट नॉन पैरेलल. ये नॉन पैरेलल शिफ्ट करेगा, ये क्या करेगा? पैरेलल शिफ्ट करेगा. क्वेश्चन इसके ऊपर आएगा. Parallel shift of dose response curve towards the right side is done by following. तो उसमें था competitive antagonist, non-competitive antagonist, partial agonist, etc. etc. So remember, competitive antagonist will shift dose response curve towards the right side parallelly. Non-competitive antagonist will also shift the response curve towards the right side, but non-parallel. Non-parallel. Now next concept आपको लिख के लेना है. So full agonist. Okay, if less dose is required to produce the same pharmacological action, known as a potentiation. known as a potentiation. known as a potentiation. मान लीजिए कि यहाँ पे A है full agonist, ये ड्रग क्या है? B है, but the dose required to produce the same effect by drug B is very less. मान लीजिए ड्रग A का डोज कितना है? यहाँ पे 10 मिलीग्राम है और ड्रग B का डोज है ओनली 1 milligram. So if less dose is required to produce the same pharmacological effect, it is known as a potentiation, and drug known as a more potent drug. So competitive antagonism will shift the dose response curve to the right side parallelly. Okay, non-competitive antagonist will shift the dose response curve to the right side non-parallelly. Right. Now shifting of dose response curve towards the right side is known as a antagonism. ओके, एंटागोनिज्म. तो एक ही ग्राफ है, वहां पे मैंने आपको टर्म्स समझा दी. सो वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. नाउ यू कैन सी देयर आर 4 ड्रग्स. ड्रग ए, ड्रग बी, ड्रग सी एंड ड्रग डी. तो यहाँ पे एक सक्सेसफुल लॉग डोज, यहाँ पे यू कैन सी ड्रग ए इज नोन एज this is a drug C is agonist. Now drug B is known as a more potent drug. Drug B is known as a more potent. Q, because the effect produced by B and C, they are the same, but dose of B is less than dose of C. That's why this drug B is known as a more potent drug. तो आप बोलेंगे सर A ने तो और भी डोज कम है. रिस्पॉन्स देखो, रिस्पॉन्स ये रिस्पॉन्स का आए नीचे. So drug B and C they are comparative. Drug B and C they are comparative. Or you can say drug A and D, ये comparative है. So you can see drug A is a more potent than drug D. Drug A is more potent than drug E, drug D, and drug B is more potent than drug C. Again you can see dose response curve. Dose response curve. Again, if you plot log dose versus response, you get a two type of curve. First curve is known as a steep curve. Curve A is known as steep curve. Curve B is known as a flat curve. बोलेंगे सर इसमें क्या है अभी इसका क्या use है? So steep curve means what? You can say there is a sudden increase in the response. There is a sudden increase in the response of drug. Drug which produces steep curve. जो भी ड्रग है वो जल्दी ही फटाक से एकदम हाई कॉन्सेंट्रेशन में रिस्पॉन्स देंगे. They are dangerous. Drug which produces the steep drug response curve. DRC मतलब drug response curve. So they are prone to toxicity. ये ज़्यादा टॉक्सिक होंगे. ये फटाक से प्लाज्मा में लेवल उनका बढ़ रहा है. Now drug B will produce flat dose response curve. तो ये ड्रग B क्या करेगा धीरे धीरे response curve flat response. So drug B is more safe than drug A. Drug A is less safe. Drug B is more safe. Then in this diagram, adverse reactions. मान लीजिए drug A. This is drug A. At this concentration, it produces the beneficial effect. But if you increase the dose of drug, that it will produce adverse effect or unwanted effect. The same drug can have an adverse effect if you increase the dose. Right now, last point is the types of antagonism. Types of antagonism. Question is ऊपर आ चुका. Okay, question आ चुका है. Antagonism के कितने types थे? Types of antagonism. With types of antagonism, you know that agonist and antagonist. So they will compete for a. There are four types of antagonism. First one is known as the physical antagonism. First one क्या है? Physical antagonism. What do you mean by physical antagonism? So for example, if you get a poisoning, in that case you are using charcoal, activated charcoal in alkaloidal poisoning. It act by preventing the absorption of poison by its physical action. That is known as physical antagonism. Now chemical antagonism. So if you get poisoning due to heavy metals, you are using DDA, ethylene diamine tetraacid acid, which chemically will form a bonds with the metal and will chelates. It is known as chemical antagonism. Now third type of antagonism is nothing but the physiological antagonism. इसके ऊपर अभी क्वेश्चन आ चुका है जी. Physiological antagonism. ये फिजिकल एंटागोनिज्म मतलब क्या है? जो पॉइजन का इफेक्ट है अगर वो फिजिकल एक्शन से कम किया है तो उसको बोलेंगे फिजिकल एंटागोनिज्म. जैसे चारकोल, एक्टिवेटेड चारकोल विल प्रिवेंट द अनएब्सॉर्ब्ड अल्कलॉइड्स फ्रॉम द जीआईटी. दैट इज अ फिजिकल एंटागोनिज्म. केमिकल एंटागोनिज्म EDTA विल फॉर्म अ चिलेट्स और विल फॉर्म बॉन्ड्स विद द मेटल. मेटल के साथ में बॉन्ड करेगा कौन? EDTA. एंड इट विल इनएक्टिवेट द मेटल. दैट इज अ केमिकल एंटागोनिज्म. और फिजियोलॉजिकल एंटागोनिज्म क्या होता है? So opposite pharmacological actions binding with the different receptor. क्या है देखो, opposite pharmacological action produced by binding with the different receptor. ठीक है, opposite pharmacological action कैसे होता है मैं बोलता हूँ. For example, adrenaline मालूम आपको, adrenaline or adrenaline. So obviously that will stimulate the bronchial smooth muscle and will cause bronchodilation. So adrenaline will cause bronchodilation. Now another hormone is there known as histamine. It will produce a bronchoconstriction. So adrenaline will cause bronchodilation by acting on a beta receptor. इसके खुद के receptor है beta 1, beta 2, beta 3, alpha 1, alpha 2. So by acting on a beta 2 receptor, it will cause bronchodilation. But histamine by acting on a histamine 1 receptor, okay, will cause bronchoconstriction. यहाँ पे bronchoconstriction कर रहा है histamine by acting on its own receptor. कौन सा receptor है? Histamine receptor. Adrenaline क्या करता है? Bronchodilation by acting on a beta receptor. So opposite pharmacological action. एक कर रहा है bronchoconstriction, एक कर रहा है bronchodilation. लेकिन दोनों के receptor अलग अलग है. So opposite pharmacological action by binding to a different receptor. That is known as a physiological antagonism. ये क्वेश्चन GPAT 2021 में आया. GPAT 2021. Type of antagonism is nothing but the pharmacological antagonism. Pharmacological antagonism. So opposite pharmacological action binding to a same receptor. Opposite pharmacological actions binding to a same receptor. ठीक है, तो physiological antagonism क्या है? So opposite action binding to a different receptor. Opposite pharmacological action binding to a different receptor मतलब adrenaline will cause bronchodilation by binding to a beta receptor. Histamine will cause bronchoconstriction. Histamine will cause bronchoconstriction by binding to a histamine to one receptor. रिसेप्टर क्या है अलग है, एक हिस्टामाइन रिसेप्टर है, एक क्या है बीटा रिसेप्टर, बीटा एड्रेनर्जिक रिसेप्टर. So by binding to these different receptors, these different drugs will produce different action or opposite action. एक करेगा bronchodilation, एक करेगा bronchoconstriction. That is known as a physiological antagonism. Pharmacological antagonism क्या है? Opposite pharmacological action by binding to a same receptor. जैसे होता है beta receptor. Okay, beta receptor. Noradrenaline by binding to a beta receptor. Take example of beta 1 receptor. Noradrenaline by binding to a beta 1 receptor will increase the heart rate, force of contraction. Heart rate increase करेगा, force of contraction. Adrenaline, noradrenaline, right? By binding to a beta 1 receptor will increase the force of contraction and heart rate, blood pressure, right? Now, beta antagonists like propranolol, any other drug, propranolol, bisoprolol, pindolol, indolol, so they will cause blockage of receptor, okay, and they will decrease the heart rate, force of contraction and blood pressure. Question आपको ऐसा आता है, histamine and adrenaline they are ठीक है dash dash. Question में आएगा physical antagonist, chemical antagonist, pharmacological antagonist, physiological antagonist. So adrenaline, histamine they are a physiological antagonist. Question आएगा आपको propranolol and noradrenaline they are a which type of antagonist. ऑप्शन में आएगा physical antagonist, chemical antagonist, physiological antagonist, pharmacological antagonist. So at that time अगर ड्रग जो है बीटा एंटागोनिस्ट है तो मतलब जो रिसेप्टर है उसका एगोनिस्ट और एंटागोनिस्ट अगर यूज करेंगे तो वहां पे कौन सा एंटागोनिज्म होगा फार्माकोलॉजिकल. जैसे यहाँ पे प्रोप्रानोल, अटेनोल, बिसोप्रोल एंड नॉरएड्रेनालिन. सो नॉरएड्रेनालिन will stimulate the beta 1 receptor and propranolol will block the beta 1 receptor. ठीक है, ये दोनों भी किस में होते हैं बीटा रिसेप्टर. Now noradrenaline by acting on a beta 1 receptor will increase the blood pressure. ये ब्लड प्रेशर बढ़ा देगा कौन नॉरएड्रेनालिन. बट प्रोप्रानोल बाय ब्लॉकिंग द बीटा 1 receptor will decrease the blood pressure. So this noradrenaline and propranolol they are known as the pharmacological antagonist. ठीक है, और एड्रेनालिन जैसे एड्रेनालिन बोल सकते हो आप, नॉरएड्रेनालिन बोल सकते हो. तो एड्रेनालिन जैसे नॉरएड्रेनालिन, noradrenaline will by acting on a alpha 1 receptor will cause vasoconstriction, and histamine by acting on a H1 receptor will cause vasodilation. That is also again a physiological antagonism. Types of antagonism क्वेश्चन आता है, एग्जांपल पूछेंगे. activated charcoal used in the poisoning is a example of which type of antagonism. वहाँ पे आएगा physical antagonism. EDTA or EDTA used in the metal poisoning is a type of type of antagonism. Chemical antagonism इसका और एक एग्जांपल बताऊँ मैं. फॉर एग्जांपल डेस्पिरोक्सामाइन. ओके, डेस्पिरोक्सामाइन ये आप स्पेलिंग नहीं लिख रहा मैं. डेस्पिरोक्सामाइन इज अ एंटीडोट यूज्ड इन द आयरन पॉइजनिंग. जो आयरन होता है, आयरन की पॉइजनिंग में डेस्पिरोक्सामाइन. सो इट इज अ केमिकल एंटागोनिस्ट टू द, it will bind to the iron, will chelate it, and that is a chemical antagonism.